Hi there, in this tutorial we are going to use all the techniques we've used so far to create this. There's a little bit of quick selection, a little bit of select a mask, a little clipping mask, and we should get the text to interact like this. All right, let's get started. First up, let's go to File, let's go to Open, and in our exercise files there's one called Text Interaction 01. Okay, it's in that folder we've been working in called 05 Selections. Open them up. Now this one is a PSD rather than a JPEG. Why? It's because that I wanted to use a specific font and for us all to use the same font. And because all machines are different, you're probably not going to have this particular font's called Lust. If you want to, you can just obviously click on this layer and hit delete and type out your own text. But for the moment, while you're practicing, let's just work with this font here. What I did is you can right click text here and say convert to shape. It's not appearing there. And it just turns this font here into a shape rather than editable text. So that means it loads on your machine, but you can't change it. You're stuck. Anyway, what we want to do is let's turn the type on and off. And I'm just kind of looking at parts, mainly this chunk through the middle here. This would be good to kind of overlap. So I want to select this, mask it, have it on its own layer above the text. So let's do that. We're using all the skills we've learned so far, just putting it to a practical example. So I'm going to turn off the Scots layer. I'm going to click on the ink layer, grab my quick selection tool, in terms of the brush size, it doesn't really matter. I've got mine at about 50. I'm turning this on and off to see how far I need to go up and down. So I'm going to grab most of that. I'm going to grab most of this. Do I want? Can you see I could go through and keep selecting this, but I don't need it because the text is not gonna, maybe I will just for good measure. Add it to it, doesn't really hurt. Okay, you're just trying to work out what you need from this to be above. Perfect. So I've done a selection from it. Now, if I just added a layer mask now, it's gonna kind of work. It's not what I want. I'm gonna do one extra step first. I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna duplicate this layer. So I'm gonna right click it, say duplicate, and this is going to be top ink 01. So I've got two of them now. Now when I add that to this layer, okay, I've got this top bit here that's just got this ink, and the one underneath is this. And the one underneath just kind of fills in the background. So now it's just about layer order. Okay, like we did earlier on with the text in the model, it's very similar. Okay, so I'm going to turn the text on, drag this above. So this is above that. Now it looks okay as is. I'm going to zoom in, but I want to, yeah, there's some bits I can tidy up. So some of these edges here aren't great. So with the layer mask selected, remember you have to click on this, click on select and mask like we did in the previous tutorial. And then some of these global ones, well, definitely these global ones are going to work better in this case. You can work on them individually with the paintbrush, but because they're all very similar, we can just drag these things around. So edge detection, yeah, might work. Smoothing in this case, I really like, so I've just kind of picked a random number. I'm going to turn this on and off, and I'll get the editor to zoom right in. Can you see maybe across this area here? So that's the original. That's with the smoothing turned on. It just kind of makes it nice. Shift edge can be helpful as well. I increased it. Actually, I want to decrease it. So that's it now. That's it before. That's it now. It's a little nicer. I'm going to click OK. Awesome. So I've got that layer. The mask is pretty good. And I'm going to work on a couple of other parts. And there is some bits we're going to do when we start shadowing the background to kind of make it fit in. So you can skip ahead the next minute or two, okay, while I do the rest of these. So what else do I want? See this big sticky thing here? I want that to be above the S. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to turn this top one off just to make things a little easier to look at. I'm going to duplicate the ink layer. Duplicate layer. You're going to be called top ink 02. Great. Might as well move it to the top. So with this layer selected, quick mask tool, I'm going to grab all of that, turn this on. Actually, it's probably better underneath it for the moment, so I can turn the text on and off. That's probably what I want. Great. So I'm going to turn them all off except for this guy here. I'm going to add you to a layer mask. He's going to be above my text. Turn the text on. And there he is there. Now in my haste, I selected too much because I don't want it above the H. So I'm going to paint out that selection. And this is going to bring in some of our techniques that we learned earlier on. Remember, we were able to paint directly on the mask with black and white to either show or hide things. So on my mask, I'm going to grab my black paintbrush. So there he is there, paintbrush. Do I want it to be black? I do. I want it to be black. I'm going to make sure my opacity is at 100%, and I'm just going to paint out. Mine's a bit of a fuzzy brush there. It doesn't really matter in this case. You can see it kind of starts bringing through the F's. I'm going to undo that a couple of times, step backwards, and I'm going to go to my brush size, and I'm just going to have the hardness up a lot higher so that I can paint this out. There you go, H. There's a lot of toing and froing. Now with that mask selected, I can go to select a mask, and I'm going to zoom in. Now again, I'm going to crank up the smoothing. You can see it just made it nice. I'm happy with that. Shift edge in a little bit. I'm happy with that as well. What we'll do here though is we'll show you, see this one that says remember settings? It just means it's gonna, every time I load this back in for the subsequent mask that I'm gonna do, it's gonna remember that kind of smoothing and that kind of shift edge. Handy. Zoom out. And let's go through and do the last bit. So I'm gonna turn both of them on. It's looking kind of cool. Now I'm gonna turn these two both off. And what am I going to do next? I'm going to do this kind of like this bit that blobs out and this little stalk thing. So duplicate the layer, right click, duplicate, top. I called the other one link. You noticed I didn't. Okay, top ink 03. Now where is it going to go? It's going to be all of this stuff. So quick selection tool. And I'm going to drag across not that. So I'm holding down the Option key on my Mac or Alt key on my PC to paint that stuff out. There's some weird stuff around there. I'm going to turn you on, and I see there that that's going to go across the T that I don't want. So I can either paint it out with the black paintbrush later on, like I kind of did in the last bit I did, remember over here, or I just removed it from the selection here. Cool. So with this layer selector, I'm going to turn it into a layer mask. I'm going to pop it just above my Scott shoes. Instantly, I can see there's a little bit there that I don't like, but that's okay. Let's look at painting it out. So on my layer mask, black paintbrush, there you are. And I'm going to paint that out. I'm just kind of mocking it up there. Yeah, looks all right. Cool. With it selected, I might tidy it up with select a mask, and hopefully, because it's remembered my selections, it's done the smoothing and the shift edge. Okay, I'm going to turn it on. You can see it across there, turn it off, nice and smooth there. All right, let's click OK. Turn all three of them on. It's kind of cool, eh? I like it when there's this kind of like interaction. It looks better from afar. It's the same stuff as we've learned, but in a different practical exercise, because sometimes cutting people out and you're like, oh, okay, I understand that. It's quite simple. There's just one person. But when there's this like interaction, it's the same principle, but we've had to do it across 3 layers. And we didn't even have to do it across 3 layers. I just broke it into little sections to make it a little easier for us to understand. You could have just selected all of these in one big go, but I'm not that clever. So the last thing I want to do is I want to kind of darken these parts in here. Now, the problem with, we used the technique earlier on. Remember when we settled that model in the grass? Okay, we used the burn tool. The burn tool is amazing when you're dealing with images, but because I want to darken up the text, watch this. There's a big kind of like Ghostbusters no-go. The burn tool can only work on what's called raster or bitmap images. Don't sweat it. All we need to do is a slightly different technique. So this is new stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer. That's this little turned up page here. We're going to call this one shadows. I'm going to grab my paintbrush. I'm going to pick a color. So I'm going to click in here. Okay, my foreground color, make sure it's down at black. I'm actually going to maybe pick a slightly warmer, maybe in the pinky space. Where's my pinky space? Just to match because it's kind of pink in the background there. It's still dark black, but it's got a hint of magenta in there. Now in terms of my paintbrush, I'm going to have the hardness down at 0, so it's nice and fluffy. Looks like that. Undo. I'm going to pick a nice big brush size, 300. And what I'm looking to do is I want to kind of like, actually I'm going to undo. I'm going to turn the opacity down. At 100% it's coming out a bit strong. Okay, so I'm going to just lower it down a little bit. Okay, and what I want to do now, if I click, I can kind of build it up, you can see. So it's just a nicer way of building up stuff. So I'm going to go edit, step backwards a good few times. I'm using my shortcut so I don't have to keep clicking on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's do a really obvious one. Let's do across this H. So I'm going to do across there. And Works pretty good, except it's coloring in the background and everything. I'm gonna go on full noise. And can you see it's actually covering, I've gone way too far as an example for you, but you can see it's just coloring in the background, which is not amazing, but there is a cool little trick. It's combining what we did a little earlier on. It's called a clipping mask. So at the moment, the shadow is for it to only cover the thing straight underneath. Remember that little arrow that appears when we're using some of the adjustment layers? You can do the same thing with a layer with it selected. Go to layer, go to this one that says create clipping mask. And you can see now this layer is only affecting the Scott Shoes layer. And I can paint out here what I like. It's appearing, can you see it on the little thumbnail there? It's appearing up here, but it's only affecting the things underneath. So what I'm gonna do is select all, and then I'm gonna go edit, clear. Gets rid of all that junk I've done, select, deselect. So with the shadow layer selected, it's got a clipping mask just above Scott. I'm gonna go through here, my opacity, what is it at, 38. I'm just gonna kind of do some broad kind of shadow stuff. I'm just clicking a couple of times, getting the big stuff done first. You might have to be careful because you don't want to cover this and the S, so I'm gonna just make it a little smaller here. Clickety click. If I miss anything, probably. You guys are all watching me. Cool, so I'm getting this in. I'm actually gonna go double down, get a smaller brush. I quite like the big broad stuff first, and then get in the smaller, I'm getting a smaller brush and just kind of, I like it quite sharp where it exactly comes out, but then gets more fluffy. Clicking and dragging, clicking, clicking, clicking and dragging. Holding spacebar and then clicking and dragging the mouse, you can see it's quite handy when you are doing this type of thing. You want to kind of move around nicely. If you've been avoiding shortcuts so far, you might finally get here today. Hold spacebar, click, hold and drag. All right, it's looking kind of cool. What do you think? I'm liking it. I do realize you can't read the word shoes, but we're going for like abstract cool. It could be like a nice big graphic for the front cover and supported with maybe a logo that kind of helps define the text a lot. You see this quite a bit in covers of magazines where they have like the name of the magazine along the top, but the image kind of interacts with it a little bit, and the brand of the magazine is strong enough that you know that the magazine is GQ or Glamour, or I don't even know if Glamour's a magazine, but you get what I mean. So play along with this tutorial, give it a go, and in the next video, I'm gonna set some homework where I'm gonna give you examples for you to work on your own. I'll see you there.